which is really cool, is due to the whole situation at the moment being remote, they've created some bespoke video software so that clinicians can do their therapy remotely via video tools, which is really cool. A bit about me: I was a career changer into coding. I attended the Maiden Academy bootcamp, which is a bootcamp in Bath, and yeah, it's 4 months bootcamp. Half of it was remote, which was interesting, but it was really good. Yeah, prior to the bootcamp, I hadn't really done any coding or programming. I was working as a speech and language therapist in the NHS, so very vast career change. But yeah, now I've got my first job in tech, and so far so good. So that's just me.
Thank you very much. Mirabella?
Hello everyone, my name is Mirabella. You can call me Mira as well. I've started working for the transport division of Booking.com about 2 months ago. So we are the people who are in charge of when you go on Booking.com, renting a car or getting a taxi from the airport. So I'm in the taxis team. I work in a cloud role, so that's a bit different to just being like a front end or a full stack developer. I focus on the cloud, which basically means that I do a lot of AWS stuff as opposed to just coding every day. And my job is a bit different to a developer's job because it's a bit of DevOps infrastructure-y. I've been coding for a bit as a hobby, so I've had like an on and off relationship with coding for a few years. Did a few courses, evening courses, basically everything that I could find in the community, and I can tell you more about those later on. But when I decided to actually make the move, because I'm a career changer as well, I used to work in finance, and when I decided to actually make the move, I came across a program organized in Manchester called Tech Returners, which is a part-time sort of boot camp. It was 15 weeks, and a lot of it was independent work. So we would have a lecture every week, and then the rest was independent work, which it was web development, but that prepared me really well for just getting on with my learning on the job right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Aatif, do you want to go next?
Hi everyone, I'm Aatif. A bit about me: I did 3 years of a medical degree and decided I wanted to do software development instead. So switched to that. I had very little development experience when I did. A little bit about the company I work for. I work for Metaswitch. We do telecommunications software, and we focus a lot on running that software in the cloud. And just got bought by Microsoft, which is exciting. It's a very old company, not very old, it's older than me. And so I work on quite an old product and have been doing a lot of ramp up on that. I program in C, and I'm here representing myself only, not my company.
Perfect, thank you very much. Abi?
Hi, so I am a full stack developer at a company called Virtuo. They're a company that do car rentals based where you do everything from your phone. And I've been working for them for about 10 months now. But prior to that, I did a bootcamp called Ironhack. It was a 9-week course where you learn full stack development. And after I finished that, I decided that to stay on as a teaching assistant. So I stayed there for 10 months where I helped people learn the basics of web development. And like some of the others where they've done a career change, this was my first career. So when I was 18, I decided that I didn't want to go to university. I didn't know what I wanted to do. It was too expensive. So I moved country to be an au pair. I did that for 3 years and then decided that working with children was completely unstimulating. So I picked web development.
Thank you very much. Dagmara, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi. So my name is Dagmara. I am currently a web developer for Students' Union UCL. I've been in that role for about 10 months. I work on our main website and few other smaller bits of software as well that we use mainly for our commercial integration with all the services that we provide. So we, as a stack, we use PHP and Drupal as a flat framework, and recently started using React as well for part of a few decoupled apps. Previously to this role, I had few different careers in my life actually. Last one being a technical recruiter, which even though the company was really nice, I didn't find the job very fulfilling. So, but actually something really good came out of that because finding out more about the industry and going to meetups, I actually discovered that I really would love to code. So here I am.
Thank you very much. A lot of you already answered my first question, which was your journey to becoming a developer. So it's quite nice because yeah, now we kind of all know. But one question we did get was, how did you find your first job? So I'm guessing they mean, was it like Twitter? Was it through a recruiter? Did you see an ad somewhere? Yeah, how did you find your first job? And we'll start with Dagmara.
Well, yeah.
So I've actually basically I just applied directly when. Sorry,
I muted them. Sorry.
So I found the ad online, as you would, and applied directly for this role. I actually was really lucky because I applied only for few roles, and this one turned out to be a very good fit. So I didn't really look around for much longer. So but yeah, I think like with the recruitment experience I had before, I would say that applying directly is usually a very good thing because I think you show interest in the company and so on.
Thank you. Mira, how about you?
Mine's going to be a very different answer. So basically tech returners get sponsored by companies sometimes. So in this case, they got a sponsorship from Booking. So they have interviewed people who have graduated, and that's how I actually got this one specific job.
Okay, interesting. Abi?
Okay, so mine is a little bit different. I found it quite hard to find a job, but that was mostly because I live in France and I don't speak French. So my French isn't at the level where it should be for working in a company. So I did a lot of different applying for jobs on LinkedIn. There's a site called Welcome to the Jungle. I'm not sure if it exists in the UK. And in the end, it was a recruiter that contacted me on LinkedIn, which is how I found out about my position.
Yeah, just to let everyone know that Abi is in Paris, is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I love that we have someone from the, like, not the UK here as well on our panel.
I mean,
it's a good thing
I'm
about
from the UK.
But on the panel at the moment, like, it's quite
Yeah.
nice to be able to run them virtually, like not just everyone, from London giving their opinions. So that's quite good.
Yeah, it's cool. I've attended a couple of things and it's very nice.
Yeah, yeah. What about you, Aatif? How did you find your job?
I was approached by a recruiter on LinkedIn who wanted to have a chat. We had a phone call, and he applied on my behalf, and I took it from there with the company.
Cool. And Daniella, would you rather me call you Nelly or Daniella? What would you prefer?
Oh, you can call me Nelly.
Nelly, okay. Nelly, what about you?
So the boot camp that I went to, the Maiden Academy, they've got really lucky. They introduced us to a number of their hiring partners that they've got. They've got like a big list of hiring partners that are like different industry connections that they have. And we had an event, well, it turned out to be a remote Zoom call one, where we got to meet all the hiring partners, and the company that I work for were on that event. So after that, after finding out about the company that I work for, I just sent them my CV and a covering email and just directly applied to them saying I was really interested, and then had an interview and then got the job. Yeah, it was I would just say, like, if you research any companies and think, oh, I'd love to work for them, just send them an email and send them your CV, because it can't hurt. Like, the worst that can happen is they don't get back to you, but at least you've expressed your interest. So
yeah, I think that's really good advice, actually, because I was going to say, are there any other avenues that none of you have discussed yet that you would recommend to anybody here now, and that's open to any of you?
Do you mean other avenues in terms of other ways of applying for jobs?
Yeah. So any other ways where someone could look for a job that we haven't already discussed?
I'd definitely go through recruiters, LinkedIn jobs, job sites like Total Jobs and CW Jobs, all of those ones. And like, if there's companies that you know about, emailing them directly. I'd try all of those.
And for me, I would also add attending meetups. I mean, it's quite hard now, but I made a lot of different connections at companies by going to meetups after work. So I would go, you would listen to 3 people talk about a subject, and then at the end you can eat pizza and talk to them. And it's a nice way of getting to know more about the companies and if they are hiring before their jobs are official.
Yeah.
I also agree with meetups. So at meetups, you can also get to meet some recruiters from time to time. So I actually got to meet a recruiter from a meetup, and she was able to give me some insights about jobs at her company. And she reviewed my CV and told me a bit about, like, they were not recruiting at the time, but she was able to tell me a bit about the level that they were sort of expecting someone to come in at, and the sort of things that they're expecting from candidates. So that was quite useful. So there's recruiters who work for recruiting agencies, and there's recruiters who work for specific companies, like in-house recruiting people. And if you can find someone who works in the in-house team of a specific company that you're interested in, then you can probably ask them some more questions if you've got any about that company, because they may be able to help.
Yeah.
I'd also add that if you are sending a CV out, make sure that it's tech focused. One of the things that my interviewers didn't like about mine was that I didn't really have a lot of technical stuff on there. So yeah, try and tailor it to the company you're applying for.
And what did you put on there instead if you didn't have much technical stuff?
Extracurricular things that I've been involved in. So groups, societies, stuff like that.
Okay, that's good to know. Has anyone else got anything to add to that question before I move on to the next one?
I'll just say a quick thing, that on LinkedIn, for example, we can often see who posted the ad. And sometimes if you're not really sure whether, they require a full skill set, because a lot of people are afraid of applying to roles that they feel like they might be missing the extra 20% which are listed in requirements. I would recommend to just reach out to people and just double check, because that might not often, often might not be the case that they need the full spectrum of whatever is listed on the ad.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Cool. Okay, next question. Did you have to do a tech test, as the idea of doing one of these scares me? So again, open to anyone.
Depends what you mean by a tech test. I didn't have to write any code, but I did sit a written exam, which was kind of verbal, non-verbal reasoning, that kind of thing.
Okay. What did you have to do in that?
Oh, I can't quite remember. It's a bit like the 11 plus. That's all I remembered about it, really.
Okay.
Kind of predict what shape would go next, pattern matching.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
I had sort of a tech test in my interview. It was like a pair programming exercise. So I was paired with one of the developers that worked at the company. And before I had the interview, they sent me like a brief overview of what the exercise was going to be, roughly. It was kind of like, it was going to be based on a game of tennis or something like that. And then in the interview, I shared my screen and kind of, I did do some coding, but also because it was pair programming, I treated it like how I would treat pair programming normally. So just asking them questions and getting feedback from them, and then sort of coding it out together. And I think if you have a pair programming thing, the best bit of advice I would give is to just make sure all your thinking is out loud, so that if you're blocked with something, you're communicating to them like what your thoughts are and what's going through your mind, because that's kind of what they want to see, I think.
Yeah.
But I do know, I think some other tech tests I've heard you can have are like whiteboarding, where you don't actually write any code, but you sort of pseudo code things out together. So similar thing where you kind of say out loud what the problem is and options you could do, and they write it on a whiteboard. I've not had that, but I've heard that that's something that you can have in an interview.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time people interviewing just want to know your thought process, so that if you were then in the job stuck, you would be able to logically try and work out a thing. So actually thought process is normally the most important thing, rather than like trying to solve the problem. Anyone else?
So when I did my technical interview, it was a take-home one. So they sent me an email with what I had to do, and they gave a dedicated time. So you should spend 2 hours on this and then email it. If you don't finish, that's okay. We just want to see what you've done. And then I had an in-person interview where we discussed what I had done and why I had done something. And we talk about the stack that they use and the complexity of the project. And it was more just to get a feel for the company, the second interview. But I did have some take-home interviews where they were like, you should spend 10 hours on this, which I personally find a little bit ridiculous, because
Yes,
that's a lot of time to ask someone to give up on something where you might not even get to the next round. But most technical interviews I had here in Paris were to do at home. And then you emailed the answers.
One of the things, sorry to add, one of the things my trainer who I had at the academy said was, if you have a tech test where you're, say obviously this wouldn't count for a remote interview, but when this is all over, if you have a tech test and you're physically there and they put you in a room and you have to like write code and things, always make sure you make your plan visible. So write out your plan, so that just in case you don't finish it, they can see what you were planning to do, and you could get extra points for doing that.
So for the job I've got, so where I'm working at now, I had a half an hour technical test prior the actual panel interview, and it was mainly consisting of like small debugging exercises where you would have bits of code where you would need to either refactor or just add styling, for example. I wouldn't say it was very complex. I would say the time given was a little bit just a little bit short, but yeah. But another interview that I had, technical interview as well, was purely JavaScript one, which was a tech interview, which was kind of a pair programming as well, remotely, where I would be given a task to write 3 different functions, which would be implementing with pure JavaScript things like what was it, for each, for example, or map. So yeah, and then you obviously talk through your code. Or
Yeah, I had something similar, but mine was a pairing exercise. So we were told it was going to be like a bit of an exercise, including a bit of everything. So I went in not really knowing what to expect. I just knew it was going to be pairing, and I was going to be asked to build something. So that was a bit daunting. But it was a pairing exercise. They told me what they wanted me to build, and I was given a document with what they wanted from me and the tests that thing was going to need to pass, and it was all going to be done via pair. So I had someone else who was already in the company pairing up with me, and again, I'm gonna have to underline that as well. It's really important to keep saying what you're thinking. It's really, really important, because sometimes I'm the type of person who likes to just jump into the code and just I like to try it out and see if it breaks and see if it works. But it is really hard for me to just stop, take a step back, and think, no, I have to tell them what I want to do before everything, because otherwise they're just going to look at me and not understand. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, so I was pairing with someone, but there was also someone else from the company observing us. So it was me, the laptop, the other person, and then the more senior person observing us on the other side. So if I hadn't spoken, then that person would be a bit left out from the whole process, which is not what you want from an interview. And then I actually had 2 technical interviews for this job, and the second one was very cloud focused, but it was very open as well. I was just told that they're gonna try and see a bit about how much I know. It was very, very open. I just went in, they asked me, so what have you done up to now with the cloud, and how much have you researched, studied, read? And I just started telling them things, and then they started asking me questions based on those things. So it was still technical, but not in a code sense, more in a what do you know about this or that kind of sense.
Okay. Anybody else got anything to add before I move on to the next question? Can you remember any questions that you got in your interview? People want to know what type of questions you could get, or they could get.
I do, and I've got them on my laptop here, so give me a second.
Perfect.
So I didn't actually get any technical questions in my interview, as if I didn't get any questions about coding or programming or anything. They were all typical style interview questions. So I got asked things like, because of the bootcamp I did, I got asked what I found most difficult when I was learning to code and what I enjoyed the most, what sort of people I don't get along with in a team.
Wow.
How often do I get stressed? I got asked that. And how do I manage my stress? I got asked how I would know if I was successful in my career and what measure would I use to tell whether I was feeling successful in my career. I got asked the strengths and weaknesses one.
So a lot of yours seem to be quite like personality based rather than like technical.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
the technical stuff was probably covered in the pair programming bit of the interview, because it was the whole interview was remote. It was kind of split into sections.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of mine were. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say that I've got more. I can carry on, or like someone else can.
I think carry on.
Oh yeah, if you want to carry on, you can tell us the rest.
Hopefully these are helpful to people. I don't know. I got obviously the obvious one. Tell me about yourself. What skills can you bring to the role? What have you learned on your boot camp? What do you love about coding? Yep, those are the main ones.
Aatif, you can go now.
A lot of the questions I can't really remember, but in retrospect, they were quite transparent analogies for computing problems like concurrency, unreliable networks, that kind of thing. And I'd echo what Nelly said about thinking out loud, and part of thinking out loud is also how your personality comes across. How willing are you to take criticism? How willing are you to say, I'm not really sure about that, or this is a flaw in my thinking that I might be missing? Because that's really important, that continues to be important on the job, right? Is not pretending as if you're all knowing or infallible.
Yeah.
So during one of my interviews that I had, so not for the company that I currently work for, one of the questions they asked me was something strange like, how many square meters of trees are there on the earth? Just so they could gauge my reaction and the type of questions I would ask and how I would go about almost like debugging something where it seems impossible to know at the start, but building it down into smaller parts where you can give an approximate answer. So that was a very strange interview question. And I also had questions, what is the difference between null and undefined in JavaScript? The ones that beginners often get tripped up at. But there wasn't any really horrible questions, and it was mostly just about what I wanted from a team and what I could give, because I'd already done the technical interviews prior to the in-person interviews.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I've got just one which I remember, which was probably the hardest question I was asked. It's not for the job that I actually ended up doing. Was to describe an implementation of data structure in one of my projects. What data structure I used and why, and how I implemented it. So that was pretty tricky.
Do you remember how you answered that?
Yes, not great.
I was about to say on that I think it's actually really important that if there's an answer that you don't know. So actually in my last developer job, I started interviewing people and looking for new developers in our team. And actually one thing I always really admired, if there was a question that they didn't know, they would say, actually, I don't know that. However, this is what I would do to try and find that answer. Because I think admitting that you don't know something is a huge strength. It takes a lot of guts and bravery to admit that. And it's actually a really nice quality to have in a team member. And also showing how you would then go about finding that is also a really important part as well. You know, I've joked before that when Stack Overflow's been down in my team, that, oh, you know, we may as well go home now, because, you know, we can't work for the rest of the day, because it's kind of a given that you're going to Google, you know, multiple times a day, you know, and you know, actually, if you don't know an answer, it's completely okay, but just saying, you know, I don't know, but actually here is what I would Google, or here is how I would go about finding that answer, particularly if it's like, you know, a complex technical question that, you know, you don't. And then they may, one person who I was interviewing with at work, I didn't really like his approach, but he would deliberately ask one really hard question to see whether someone would like lie or admit that they didn't know it, and how they would Google it. Because again, that's finding out someone's personality trait, because actually you don't really want to work with someone who's going to say, yeah, I know everything, and then just kind of blag an answer. So he would deliberately always put in a really tricky question. I always felt a little bit uncomfortable with it. I kind of got his logic, but yeah, it's a tricky one. Okay, so I have a few more, but I'm actually seeing quite a few questions coming in our chat. So I'm going to move over to the questions that are coming in the chat now. What I'll do is I'll just go down them chronological as people have asked them, and then we'll just try and get through as many as we can until we finish, you know, at 8 o'clock. So the first one is from Nigel. I'd like to ask whether any of the panelists had a mentor, and if so, how did they choose and then approach them, and what did they get out of the relationship? So have any of you had a mentor, and if so, how did you find them?
I can't answer that one because I didn't have a mentor.
That's completely fine. It's fine to say you didn't have one.
I suspect this question means employment.
Well, no, because you still might have a mentor. I know senior developers who still have mentors, and you know, your mentors can also change as your career changes as well. So it could be, you know, that you still have one now.
Yep, sure. So I have a mentor at my company. We are assigned to them when we join, and I forget the details of the question, but one thing that I find really, really important in the mentor-mentee relationship is realizing that you really own your own personal development, and you own that relationship. So it's up to you as the mentee to decide where you want to go, what direction you want to take it in. And that can take a couple of forms. I think firstly you need to not necessarily write a personal development plan, but think about what aspects are you working on yourself right now. What are your long-term career goals, and think about what actions you can take to help you reach those. And also, you know, ask your manager and your mentor, oh, you know, what in the company do you think might help me progress in this aspect? And the other relates to when you're paired on a task with a colleague. So suppose you've not got a lot of experience deploying some software in AWS, for example. I find it really important to draft a mentor charter, or have a chat with your mentor beforehand saying, yeah, this is where my knowledge levels are at right now. This is what I'd like to get out of this session. Here's how I might ask for help. Here are my personal pitfalls. I might, you know, fall into a trap in this way. So be wary of that. But you know, we work in a knowledge-based profession. It's very important to learn effectively and value the sources of knowledge.
Yeah.
I've never had a mentor, but I've like a one-to-one relationship with a mentor. I've never had that, but I did have some people whose journey I really admired, and whom I thought, these are the people I'm going to go and ask when and if I have specific questions. So personal or even technical. Those were the people who helped me a lot when I was struggling with technical concepts as well. So I did have my small like bank of people whom I used to go to whenever I was in doubt. I did have them there, and I'm really thankful. But I've never had like a defined mentor, because I know part of the question is how did you choose them. I didn't really think about choosing one specific person. Maybe I should, because it is advised, but I did choose some people whom I thought they had a similar journey. That's the kind of place that I want to be in as well in a few months' time. So I'm gonna go and ask them how they went about doing certain things.
I like that, having like a few people who who you admire and you can go to and ask questions. I actually really like that. I think it's nice.
Worked well.
Anybody else? Okay. Next question. May I ask how much IT knowledge is required before starting your first IT job?
So I think this is really hard, and I think a lot of it depends on what job you're going into and what the company does. For example, we have a QA tester at our company. So she's not involved with the code, but she's involved with the development of the product. And her job, she needed to know iOS and Android really well, because she has to test on both devices. And there's a lot of different jobs within the tech field. So I think it really depends on the company that you're going to work for and what you mean by IT knowledge.
Yeah. I think it's always quite good to maybe like look at some job ads when you're starting to learn, and like if there's a company who you really want to work for, like look at their job ad and say, okay, they require these and these. Okay, I in my learning stage, I'm going to then go away, and that can kind of help give you like a path as well in your like learning. Anybody else?
I just want to add something to this question. I just want to say that no matter how much you plan to learn, no matter how much you think you're going to need to know, you will never know enough. Trust me, you will absolutely never know enough. It's the kind of field where you can't go in and say, oh, I need this and this and this before I'm able to get a job, and then work towards that. Because by the time you'll have finished working on those, that's going to be deprecated. It's going to be something completely new. Just to give an example, we were studying Node.js. Now everyone's raving on about Dino and just all the latest trends everywhere. Not really the same example, but just to give an example of how quickly things change in tech. So as you were saying before, Kim and Abi, just get a feel for what's required for the job, and then don't focus on attaining this like really high level in everything, because if you overthink it, you will get some really bad imposter syndrome, and you will just never really apply, because you will keep thinking, oh, I'm not good enough. Whereas none of us can say that we're good enough, because things change so rapidly, and it's just like a continuous learning process. So you can't just think, oh, I need to know all of these and then tick them up as complete, because you just need to keep enjoying learning and keep learning, and just do what the girl said and get like a feel for what you need, and then just take it from there.
Yeah, I felt way more relaxed. Oh, go on, sorry.
I was just going to say that was one of the things that attracted me to the tech industry, is how you can have a base knowledge and you can constantly build. You will never know everything that you want to know. And it's quite attractive in a career knowing that you will always have the progression, whether within the company or moving jobs, but just personally as well.
Yeah. I was going to add, I think I felt way more calmer in tech once I kind of came to the self-realization that I'm never going to know anything. And don't even try and stress or worry, because you're never going to. You know, it's an industry that's always improving, always changing. You know, in 5 years, there's a chance that you'll be doing a job that doesn't even exist yet. And that's kind of why it's also a really exciting career and industry to be in. Next question. How long did it take from each analyst to get their job after graduating, or finishing a boot camp, or, you know, from starting?
So actually, I went to complete a postgraduate diploma. So I didn't attend a boot camp in London at Birkbeck, and which was in web development. And I actually managed to find the job before I actually finished, and that was only because my tutor was really encouraging us to actually start applying before we finish. And yeah, I think that was a very, very good piece of advice.
Thank you.
For me, 2 or 3 months.
2 or 3 months.
So for me, so I did a boot camp, and when I was in the 8th week, so it was a 9-week course, and in the 8th week, they asked if I wanted to stay on as a teaching assistant. So I stayed on as a teaching assistant, and during my last cohort there, I started like looking for jobs, but I'd done interviews for companies throughout my time there. But between finishing my bootcamp and starting working at Virtuo, it was about 10 months. But I was also working for Ironhack at the same time.
Okay. Anybody else?
I was really lucky with my bootcamp, obviously, because they had the hiring partners that they introduced us to. So I applied before I finished my course, and then managed to, I think, when did I finish my course? About a month ago. I got the job like a few days after I finished, but I think it honestly just depends like who's hiring at the time and who you manage to get an interview with and stuff. So yeah, I couldn't really say like, oh, it would take 6 months or it would take 2 months or a week.
Yeah, I'm the same as Nelly. I was very lucky as well, because at the end of my course, then I just got scheduled in for the interview, and then I got the job and everything was fine. But I just wanted to say that before I actually got on the course, it was about this time last year that I was looking at how to break into tech. And I started thinking about how to apply my previous skills into getting into the tech industry as a whole, rather than going for a developer job. So I was looking at jobs like project management, business analysts, or even like trying to find some junior dev jobs that would take me in as self-taught, but not really self-taught. So that was around this time last year, and I kept searching and applying and just discovering more about the industry until about September, end of September, when I got on the course, and then I just stayed on that track, and then finally I ended up in the job. So yeah, as everyone said, don't take our timeline as precise, because for me it was a long while. It was a few months of searching and discovering and research before I actually got on the course. And once I got on it, then I was lucky in the respect that I just got the job very quickly. But I did need those few months beforehand to just get on that.
Anybody else want to add anything else? Okay, next we have a question for you, Abi, specifically. Why Paris, and what did you think about your boot camp?
Okay, so why Paris? I was already living here for 2 years. So I lived here for 2 years as an au pair, so working for families and looking after their kids. And I love the city. It's very nice. It's very different to where I grew up. So I grew up in a small town near Birmingham. And I didn't want to live in a small town. I had a good social group here. I could go to events. I could meet people. I could do things here. And there was a boot camp here. So I did a boot camp called Ironhack. They operate in a few different countries around the world. And I really enjoyed my experience there. It was hard work. It was 9 weeks of eating, breathing, sleeping code. It was basically all I would do. I would stay late. I would work hard. But I met some cool people from it that I'm still in contact with now. And it was just a really fun intro into tech.
Okay. Thank you. And what surprised you the most about your role? That's to everyone.
I'd go for the amount of meetings that we have. I don't think anything prepares you for the amount of meetings that you have, especially now that we've all gone online. I swear there's days when all we do is just sit in meetings. So we have a meeting every day. So if any of you have read about a bit about Agile and how it works, we have a stand-up every day where we say what we've done the day before and what we're going to work on during this day. So that's at 9:15 for us and finishes at like 9:45, and I start at 9. So I kind of see that as me starting at 10, because by the time we have all of that, by the time I organize my day, thinking about what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it, having that meeting, that's my day cut off. And then we have like things that probably were, if we had been in person, things that would probably be shorter or be organized in a different way. Now they're all virtual meetings, so I think that's made it a bit worse as well. But yeah, I know it's not technical, but it is just something that you probably need to be prepared for. I
love that the next question is what bootcamp didn't prepare you for? And I think it could be the same answer, the amount of meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else?
So I also experienced something with the meetings where every morning we have a stand-up. But the cool thing is we have these, regular meetings, but every 2 weeks we have a 1-hour meeting of all of the developers where we discuss about technical aspects. So improvements that we would like to see in the code and things that we should do better or things that we should get rid of completely. And at the start, a lot of it was completely above my head. I didn't understand all of the terminology they were using or why they wanted to do these things or why they thought these things. So that was quite hard. And also, while I knew the stack, so I knew React and I knew Node before starting, I wasn't prepared for the complexity of the code. Because we work with microservices, so you really had to know how to follow the code from one part to the other part. And I'm still not very good at that a year later, but it's an experience. It's fun, and I was not prepared for the complexity.
I think for me it would be two things. The first would be the importance of culture and personality in the workplace, how you interact with each other. It's been touched on already in terms of stand-up and meetings, but also making sure that people feel psychologically safe, that they're ready to be creative and contribute, and yeah, making sure you construct an environment around you that allows everyone to be productive, and that means be flexible. The second thing would be how dependent I was on everyone around me. I was working with a very established product, and so I used to find myself getting trapped in holes quite often because, I don't know how to independently find the answer to do this, where the real answer is just to ask someone, and you'll slowly grow knowledge that way, as opposed to, this is a failure of your research as a developer.
Yeah,
I'd say something that surprised me was that other people also often don't have a clue what's going on, and not everyone knows everything. I thought going in as a junior I'd be the only one who didn't know anything and what was going on, but even some of the really experienced developers who've been there for a while, they still get really stuck with things, and there's a bit of the code base that they haven't seen before, or other people don't know it all either. So becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable and knowing that, I think it was touched on earlier by someone, you're not going to ever know everything. And then the other thing was how much teamwork is involved and how much bouncing ideas off other people and asking people questions. I think people tend to view people who code and stuff as quite insular and just like in their room doing the coding on their own, but especially if you work with in Agile or with Scrum, it's a lot of teamwork and a lot of collaborative working, which is great.
Nice.
I just wanted to add that I was actually, at the beginning, I was both surprised and terrified with the amount of freedom I was given to make decisions about technology I'm going to use. And that was really terrifying, actually. But yeah, I think you quickly figure out that this is actually a very good thing. And it's not to test you in any way, or it's just because, it's because it kind of it introduces you to this more collaborative way of working. So when you can actually come up with different ideas and add value to the team, I think you become also more confident in trying to research alternative things and make decisions, and just in general, I think it's a very good thing. Also very terrifying, but good.
Okay. Next question. What do you think are the most prominent skills the job market are looking for today?
I think they're looking for independent thinkers and people with the passion for learning and the ability and the willingness to learn, but also being able to be a good team player and, integrating well with the team and asking questions and offering your help when you can. But I think mostly they're looking for people who are able to think and solve problems in creative ways that you wouldn't necessarily always think of at the first.
I was going to say something similar. Yeah, I think they're looking for people who are self-starters, people who take initiative, and people with good communication skills as well, who are going to get on well with the team and be able to express their ideas well out loud. And people who've got a hunger for learning, definitely, because that's what this career is all about.
Yeah, I second that. Definitely, I would think about passion for learning. That's going to transpire really quickly. Make sure that you've got that drive to keep going, because you are going to have to learn a lot. And I would also go for communication skills, because, as we said before, you would think it's a job where you just sit down and code and do your own things, but actually it's not. There's a lot of communication involved. There's a lot of meetings involved, and there's a lot of collaboration with other people. So your code will go through a lot of hands before actually reaching production. So thinking about what, even if it's not perfect, thinking about just what you wanted to get out of that, it definitely helps. So making sure that you can articulate what you want. So communication skills, and definitely just let that hunger for learn show up.
I think as well, they're probably looking for people who are good at taking on feedback and good at being given like constructive feedback, because you're gonna need to accept that there's better ways of doing things quite a lot, and not getting offended by someone like giving you feedback on your code or feedback on the way you've approached something, but taking that as a learning opportunity rather than being put down by it, because it's going to happen all the time. So if you get put down by it, you'll constantly be disappointed.
On that note, one of my interview questions to a job previously was, how would you feel if someone critiqued some of the code you'd written on a pull request, and they wanted to see exactly how I would respond in that situation? So yeah, exactly that. Anyone else? Okay, next question. This is specifically for you, Aatif. What appealed to you, software dev over medicine?
A variety of things. I think the key ones would have been more of an emphasis on abstract problem solving with more room for creativity. And the other would be quality of life. I think, especially in the UK, the NHS is in many ways backed into a corner a lot of the time. And that's quite demotivating if that's the career you're looking for.
Yeah.
Thank you. I want to know which level of English is required to get your first job.
So I will say a little bit about this, because of course English is my native language, but I live in a non-native English speaking country. So when I was looking for jobs in Paris, most companies only wanted French speakers. So it depends on what country you're looking for a job in and where you're going. But of course, a lot of the answers you will find to the problems will be wrote in English. So I think having a good understanding of written English is important, but you definitely do not need to be fluent. I know so many coders who are not fluent in English, but understanding and being able to translate error messages is super helpful. But if you don't speak English as a native language, there's a lot of documentation that needs translating into other languages. So that's a cool way of getting involved into the open source community. So I know people that have translated documents into Dutch or into Russian, and that will help with your English and your understanding of like technical concepts. But you definitely don't need to be fluent in English.
And that's also a great thing to then tell your interviewer in, your interview. Oh yeah, I've contributed to these docs by doing translations. And also you'll be improving your skills in Git as well, and expanding your skills working with a team using Git, because that's a different skill as well. You can learn Git, by yourself, but then knowing how to use Git when you've got a team of like 20 developers or something is quite different. Actually, that's a perfect example of, giving your skills to a really good, use case. And then from that saying, oh, I've done this, this, and this. And it's a great story in your, in your job interview as well. And you can put it on your CV as well, as some open source work, because that's something that people always love if they look on your CV.
And documentation. We love good documentation. And
yes.
it helps open up coding to other people from other countries, which is something that I think is really important.
The codebar website, we have translation, we're trying to translate that, and we're always asking people to, it's a JSON file, so it's easy to go in there and just, it's all in English currently, so you just go into one file and change the translation into the various languages. So it's a really good way. Anybody else?
I'm actually not a native English speaker, as you can say. So I work also with a lot of people whose English is not the first language, and I would say that we are all kind of different level of English, and writing definitely helps, and it's amazing. And so, for example, if and it's in my opinion would be probably more important than your spoken English level. And as it was already mentioned, but I think writing things like blog or anything that you could actually somehow deploy, like the skills that you're learning, then to put them on paper or website or whatever is always a good thing, because documentation. So yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to reinforce the same thing. English is not my native language. And I also work with a lot of people whose native language is not English. So it's definitely not something that should put you off from applying. Just as it's been said before, as long as you can explain what you're after and just make sure that you can write clearly, and just document, because document everything clearly, then that should be okay. But don't let that put you off, because well, we're not non-native English speakers, and it's all going fine.
Anybody else want to add anything before I move on? So a few of you mentioned that you have changed careers. How easy was it for you to find a job without any previous experience in the tech industry?
I can take that. So obviously my pathway is very different, because as I mentioned before, I was applying for jobs, researching the industry, and then I got on to the tech returners course. And to be fair, when I got the job off the back of the tech returners course, they were not expecting me to have much experience. They were just, because they knew I was coming from the course. So that was a given from the start, that I was not going to have that much experience. But before, when I was applying, before I got onto the course, I was finding it a bit hard. It's definitely doable. It is definitely doable, but I was just finding it a bit hard to tell people exactly what I've done. And some specific advice that I got on this, so from that recruiter that I mentioned before, was that as opposed to just having the my technical skills on my CV, so I used to have a section called technical skills, and I would just list this. But she said, because you don't have any commercial experience in any of this, what would be really good to see would be listing your technical skills and then just mentioning a few projects that you've built with those things. So for example, I put down JavaScript on my CV and then links to the things that I've built with JavaScript before, because she in particular, but she was speaking on behalf of recruiters, she said that she wanted to see exactly what I've done. So lack of commercial experience should not, again, put you off, but you should be able to demonstrate if you've built anything with your skills and how you've taken those skills, how you've put those skills to work.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I think my interviewers were interested in things I'd done, not from a strictly technical aspect, but in terms of, has it shown interest in computing, stuff like that? Have you played around with Linux or anything like that? But really, they're after more, a way of thinking, a frame of mind.
I'd say that for the actual applying for jobs and then getting jobs, I think was easier than I thought, and the actual decision to change careers was much more difficult than that. The actual stage of applying for jobs, because then when you already decide that this is what you're going to do now, then obviously that's the only way you're going to do it. So but I think it's that stage before that, when you actually decided that you want to change careers, and now you need to fully kind of commit to your decision, is kind of more difficult. At least it was more difficult for me. And yeah.
Similar to what Mira did, I did as well. So on my CV, I had a couple of projects that I'd done that I showcased on there and talked about the technologies I'd used in those projects rather than listing like different technologies that I knew. Not sure if that's answering the question. What was the question again?
How easy was it for you to find a job without any previous experience in the tech industry?
Yeah, I think I can only speak on behalf of attending a boot camp, but it prepared me very well for how to write a CV, how to approach the technical tests and the interview, how to, didn't so much cover like how to write cover letters and things, but it prepared me enough for me to go out and apply for jobs, and then turned out to be okay. I think it was easier than what I thought, the whole applying and interview kind of process. Try not to be too scared about it.
Anybody else?
I just want to say, think about, so if you are also changing careers, think about the transferable skills that you can bring onto the table. So it's not something to be easily dismissed. So, because I used to work in finance, I used to have like quite a few skills around numbers and just like looking at big documents with loads of numbers that are not easy to read. So I translated that into code speak, to say so, as in, well, I used to have a job where I used to have to read a lot of documents that were not easy to read. So how about I try and help you out with some documentation? How about I try and help you out with like looking at some of the wiki pages that you've already got, and think about how we can work around those as well. So try and think about what you've done in your previous experience, and think about what transferable skills you've got out of that and how they could be applied to a job in tech, because that's going to get you some bonus points. And you shouldn't think of this as I'm starting from zero and it's going to be hard for me because I'm starting from zero, I'm changing careers. You're not starting from zero, and you don't have zero experience. You've got quite a lot of experience that just needs to be translated into this kind of job.
Yeah.
I definitely.
I mean, look at the questions that like Nelly spoke through earlier. You know, like a lot of those were personal skills questions. You know, and actually a lot of those skills can be transferred from, you know, whatever career you were in before. Yeah, cool.
I was going to say, pretty much every response to the interview question, all the interview questions I had were drawing on previous experiences, things that I'd done. If they ask you something about how you've demonstrated problem solving skills, I'm sure there's something that you can reflect on either in a previous job or in something you've done before on how you solved a problem and how you approached it. So definitely draw on different experiences you've had before to demonstrate your skill set.
Yeah. Okay, I will move on. How did your interview look? In particular, the tech part. So I think they mean more of like the process. So like, was it a tech interview as like round one and then a tech test? Like how was it from like initial application to then being offered the job?
Mine was, because I applied during this pandemic, mine was all done remotely. So I sent an email, like a covering email with why I'd like to work for the company with my CV. And then they got back to me inviting me for an interview. It was 3 hours, the interview, I think it was, 3 hours via Google Hangouts, a bit like Zoom. And the first half an hour, which turned out, they kind of, before I had the interview, they sent me a little itinerary of the structure of the interview. And as well, you're more than, I think I emailed them asking them what programming language the technical bit would be in. So I think it's fine to do that. Mine was in PHP because that's the stack that I'm using. But yeah, it was a half an hour to about 40 minutes long pair programming tech test bit, which was first. And then I think I had like a 5-minute break and then came back and I had about an hour and 40 minutes of just the traditional style interview questions, like some of the questions I mentioned earlier. And like discussion with it was 3 people interviewing me. And me asking, a lot of that time was taken up as well, me asking them questions and finding out what the company's like and whether I want to work there as well. Because I think sometimes people forget that interview isn't just you being asked everything, it's inter for a reason. Like you also should interview your interviewer and ask them about the company and find out if you want to work there as well.
What type of questions did you ask them?
I asked
them
from how have you how has the company responded to the pandemic and how have you supported your staff during this time? What's the company culture like? Are there social activities happening? I asked them things about the tech stack that they use. Gosh, what else I asked them? Lots of questions that kind of came up as we went along.
Yeah.
So I didn't, because I've had interviews before where I've just asked my questions at the end, but during this one I kind of asked as I went along, because as it came up, I had questions that came up.
Yeah, nice. That seems like it might have flowed a bit nicer than that awkward bit right at the end where it's like, okay, now do you have any questions?
Yeah. It was nuts because I asked for feedback after they offered me the job and they said that they enjoyed the fact that it was more like a conversation rather than them just sat asking me questions. So honestly, I think it's fine to be inquisitive and ask them things as well.
Nice. Yeah, sorry, the original question to everybody else, what does your interview look like?
So for my current role, I had a phone call before with a recruiter who told me a little bit about the company, asked if I was interested. Then the following day, they sent me a take-home technical interview, which I completed and emailed back to them. And then I went for an in-person interview to talk with the tech manager and the CTO to see what they thought of my technical interview, what I thought of the company, where I could ask them questions. So I asked them questions about the team organization and the technical stack and how things were organized. But I also asked how easy it would be for me to integrate within the team because I'm not fluent in French. And they were super cool about it. They have somebody else who works, our QA doesn't speak French. So she spoke with me, and then I was meant to schedule another interview with the HR to talk about the company and my personality and if I would fit in. But I was going on holiday for almost an entire month. So I ended up having my HR interview directly after the meeting, the interview with the team, which was, it was interesting. She was very nice and she'd never done one in English before, so it was like a learning curve for us both. But I got to ask her questions about the teams and about hiring and how they pick people and activities that they organize. So do they do drinks? Do they do team lunches and things like that?
Thank you.
Most important questions to ask, obviously. Team lunches.
Yeah, and I mean,
and do the company pay for them?
Yeah.
Well, when you start here, you have you go out for lunch with the co-founders, and it's a nice atmosphere. And also, in France, there's a really big culture about eating food. So every month we get money put onto a specific card that is used for eating in restaurants or buying your groceries. So like my team will go out for lunch each day, and they will take at least 1 hour, sometimes an hour and a half or 2 hours. So I mean, it's a big part of their daily routine.
That's great.
Anybody else?
I just had half a day. So my half-day interview, I went in because it was literally just before the pandemic. So it started, I think I had half an hour for the personal questions. which were around like teamwork and how I integrate, how I work in a team, all of that. And then I had 1 hour for the pairing exercise, and then another half hour, 45 minutes, I can't remember exactly, for the other technical interview, which was focusing on technical questions around cloud.
Okay. We've got quite a few more questions left, so unless anybody's got anything quick to add, I'll move on. Okay. Which languages are most likely to increase your chances of employment? Depends what job.
Yeah, I think focus less on the language and less, it's about the specific job you're going for, and more on the skills that'll get you there.
Yeah.
And you can also have a look if there are specific companies that you like the look of, or if you're looking in a specific area, because I know that sometimes languages are more regional, where you will have more people using a language in a certain region. So you can see what's available in your area and which companies are hiring.
Yeah, I think I agree that it's probably based on skills, because someone who was in my boot camp, and we did PHP and JavaScript stacks, he ended up getting a job in C#. So I think like sometimes you might be doing a junior job in a completely different language to what you've got previous experience in. So like as well, bearing that in mind when you're applying for jobs, like when I applied for jobs, I applied for some jobs that were like C#, some JavaScript jobs, some PHP jobs. So yeah, keep an open mind. If you're willing to like learn a new tech stack or a new language, then I think a lot of employers would encourage it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's well, statistically JavaScript is the most popular language on the market in general, but I would say that in a junior job or your first development job, most people you probably wouldn't have skills as a developer developed to the certain point when you have to really choose what path you really want to go till the end of your development career. So like basically profiling yourself, I guess this is how it's called. So I think it's like good to have like a knowledge of development fundamentals and coding in general, but I think in knowing one language will still give you a good chance to probably get a lot of junior positions.
Okay. Next question. When you were searching, how did you know what job titles would be suitable and whether your skills met their requirements? There is often a long list.
If I hit like even half the things on the list, I just applied anyway. So, but I'm not sure, because I think sometimes an employer might offer to give you a phone interview or something, even if you don't hit every single thing on the list. So it's worth.
Well, yeah, and a lot of the time, job specs are for the ideal candidate, and that's never the case anyway. So, like, and I think there was a statistic that I read that was like, women will look at the job ad, and if they meet like 70% of it, they'll be hesitant to apply, but they might. Whereas, women feel like they have to meet 100% of them in order to apply, whereas men think that, like 60 or 70%, and then they'll apply. I think I read that recently. Which made me laugh.
Moral of
yeah.
the story is go for it.
Yeah, just go for it.
So when I was applying for jobs, there was a company that I applied for. So my search was a little bit different. I decided on what type of company I wanted to work at. But for me, being able to speak English within work, even socializing can be in French, but I wanted to know that I could be confident speaking English at work. So I narrowed down my companies quite fast. And then I was like, okay, this has came up, I will apply. And for one company that I interviewed for, I had a phone interview and I explained like, okay, I'm a junior, I don't meet all the requirements. And they were like, oh, but it's okay, we have 2 jobs going. We have the one that we're advertising for, but we also have a junior position. So just because they're not advertising the job doesn't mean that they don't have a job that is open for juniors.
Yeah. Anybody else want to add anything to that?
I mean, obviously I didn't apply for jobs that said senior developer, but apart from that. So yeah, junior developer or just software developer, software engineer, full stack developer. Depends as well whether you've got a preference for full stack or back end or front end.
Yeah, and for me, one of the other things that I considered is if it said less like 1 to 3 years, I would apply anyway, because they are willing to be flexible.
That's good advice. Okay, the next question. It says no PD, and I think that means personal development. So, Adibola, if that's wrong, do let me know. But no personal development skills have been mentioned. Does that mean the companies didn't require any that you applied for? Silence.
Not sure what you mean by personal development skills.
Adibola, are you still on the call? You can come in now and expand on that question if you want, so that we get it answered for you.
I'm not sure if maybe they mean things like making sure that you're active on social media and you have a blog that's up to date with everything that you're learning. And, you know,
Okay.
I know that there's a lot of things in the culture about how you must always be learning and learning in public.
Yeah.
But in my experience, companies didn't mind so much if I didn't have that. They didn't care if my GitHub was green every single day. Like, they look at what you've done and what you've built, but I was never asked for a blog or anything like that.
Yeah.
In case it means problem determination or problem diagnosis, in terms of debugging or QA, depends on the kind of company. If you're in an agile team, then maybe, but oftentimes, especially at a junior level, a company wants to ramp you up on how they work.
Yeah, a few junior ads I've seen, it will be like, you know, like strong communication skills might be on there, because that's, they understand that actually you're not going to have like 2 to 3 years, you know, industry experience in JavaScript, but actually if you've got really strong communication skills, like that will go a long way. So yeah, maybe like, did you see any of those skills in any of the job ads that you saw? Like, you know, strong communication skills, you know, like any other soft skills that, you know, we've spoken about on this, you know, chat so far?
Yeah, I saw lots of things like good communication skills, good teamwork. Can't even think now. Yeah, lots of soft skills like that.
Yeah.
Would be on the job adverts.
Yeah. I think soft skills are almost as important, if not more important, than technical skills.
Organisation.
I think anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Was the tech test project, did the tech test project need to be designed, or was it a code wars like exercise? So going back to the similar like tech test question.
Mine was a project that was already set up, so they just wanted me to add a new feature. So it was literally already set up. They gave me a laptop with a VS Code on it, and it had like, it was in React, so it was a React project that was already set up. So they just asked me to read a document telling me what new feature I need to add, and read the tests and to think about how I would go about doing that. So it was quite different but actually quite similar. It was more practical than the code wars type of exercise. It wasn't write a function that was going to do this. It was literally just, it was very practical and very like hands-on, as opposed to like a codeware's kata.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wouldn't worry too much about code golfing, or, you know, getting an optimal solution. It's very much about writing code that other humans can come to later and understand.
Yeah. Okay. What I might do is I might try and go through the next couple. I want to try and answer everyone's questions, but I'm also cautious that we've only got 20 minutes left. So let's try and fire through the next few questions. What are companies' expectations of a junior dev?
I think I think it really depends on the company, and it's one of the best questions to actually ask at the interview. It's one of my favorites, actually. So I think it's because it's really important for you to know what is going to be expected from you in the first few months, for example, of the role, and how much support you're going to get as well during that initial kind of, you know, learning the code base and everything. So I found it, like, when I asked that question, I find that the answers are usually very, very varied when it comes from one company to another. I think some companies are very specific. So, for example, I've heard once as an answer that you would be specifically asked, like, in the first month, you're going to be doing mainly debugging, and then you're going to build a small feature, and then by the end of month 3, you will ideally be, I don't know, just doing like more epic kind of piece of software on the larger team. And some of the answers are sometimes very vague, and sometimes people don't know exactly when they interview you where you're going to sit within the team as well. So they're going to and it's not like a very standardized process for them, for example, to introduce a new team member. So so I guess it's, as I said, I think it's always worth to ask.
Yeah.
So when I started, the main expectations of me being a junior was to ask questions if I was unsure, and ask questions in a way that I could progress and learn. So if I was unsure of something, you know, spend 20 minutes trying to debug something, but if I wasn't sure of the answer, either ask the lead developer or somebody on my team or anyone in the office. But that was pretty much it. Ask questions, learn the code base, and you will grow as you practice.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, I'll move on. In what extent do companies look for certificates taken from companies like Udemy, Udacity, etc.? Did they ever look for any of those types of certificates from you? Some people are just nodding.
They never, they never asked me personally for any of those kind of things, but if you had them, I guess it would be a bonus.
Yeah.
It
could be just another thing that, you know, you show. Pardon?
Yeah, I was never asked for them, but I think it's different on if you are a self-taught developer versus being at a bootcamp, and if you have any like projects to show for it. So if you've built something, I think they would care more about what you have built rather than the course that you have followed.
Anything else to add to that?
Just quickly, that I think I put that on my CV, that I, as a kind of very small paragraph, saying that I use certain resources for learning, but I never attached any certificate.
Okay. Nelly, can you share the questions on here? Okay. I actually did just think it would probably be a really good blog post to have those questions. So I might message you after, and we can maybe talk about getting, you know, some of those questions into a blog on codebar, because I think that they'd be really interesting for people.
Yeah.
Okay. Were there any surprise technical questions that you were asked during the interview, or were most of the questions as expected based on the job description?
I wouldn't call them surprise questions, but as I explained before, as part of my second technical interview, it was an interview about how much I knew about the cloud, and I didn't have any specifics about how much I should know. So, and the conversation was a bit free fall. So they started asking me about how much I've learned, researched, all of that, and they just went on asking questions from there. And I think ultimately they wanted to know what my limit was. And that was really interesting. That was a really interesting interview. And I wouldn't call it a surprise technical question. I don't have any specific surprise technical question. It just surprised me in a way that they really wanted to know how far I could go, how much I knew, because they went into like very, very small details about everything. So whatever I mentioned, they tried to dive deep into it and see how much exactly I knew about that. So anything can happen. I think it just depends on who's interviewing you. And I think someone else mentioned before that, or I may have heard that, but some people will specifically ask you very difficult questions just to see how you react. So you literally just never know. It depends a lot on who's interviewing you.
Yeah.
I think the interviews vary so much because, like I said, with mine, I didn't get asked, apart from in my pair programming section, the technical bit, I didn't get asked any technical questions whatsoever. It was all personality type questions, typical interview style questions. So I think it just really depends on the company and their process.
Yeah. Okay. If you had imposter syndrome when applying for your job, how did you cope with that?
So I know imposter syndrome is something that a lot of my colleagues relate to. So we've had various talks on it, and part of it falls under, I think I mentioned, psychological safety. So just building that trust with people around you, and also realizing that the vast majority of your job will be not knowing something, and you have to then find it out. It's not a fatal flaw to not know how to do something off the top of your head.
I've been a developer for 8 years and I still get imposter syndrome. If I pick up a ticket and there's a bit that you don't know, and that just, a little bit of panic sets in of like, oh, am I going to do this? So yeah, even 8 years down the line, it can still happen. Anybody else?
And I think when you're applying for jobs, it's even if you don't think you meet the criteria or you don't think you're good enough, you should apply anyway, because they will either come back and say, no, that will be the worst case, but maybe they will come back and say, no, but if you do this or this, maybe, or they might tell you that they have another position open that's not the one that they're listing, but the worst could be a no.
Yeah, it's slightly related to that. Every interview is a learning opportunity, so make sure to proactively ask for feedback, and over the times that you'll get it, grow and reflect.
Yeah, feedback
I
is
had
good.
a massive case of imposter syndrome before my interview, like the weekend before. I just sort of freaked out, but I think I kind of came to the realization, like other people have mentioned, that through talking to friends and stuff who are coders, that you often feel like that in your career, and you need to just sort of accept that, and that kind of made me relax a bit, and it turned out fine in the end. So I think sometimes you can blow it out of proportion and feel like you know nothing and just focus on the things that you don't know, when actually there's a lot of stuff that you probably do know. And I saw someone else ask in the chat, how do you know when you feel ready for your first developer job? And that would be, I'm not sure whether you ever really would feel ready. Maybe some people would, but I didn't feel ready, but went for it anyway and managed to get a job, and now I feel okay about it. So yeah, my advice would be to try and go for it even if you don't feel perfectly ready.
I actually also still suffer from imposter syndrome, and did when I was applying, and did when I actually decided to change the career, because it suddenly becomes really awkward to say to people, this is what I'm doing now. And even though you don't have a job in this particular industry, you kind of are becoming a developer. So it's a very awkward moment when you're kind of not working in the industry yet, but kind of doing the job, some like trying to learn. But I would say like one thing is definitely, as everybody says, like do apply for everything just to learn how the interview process works and so on. And I think, to be honest as well, during that process is a very helpful thing, because sometimes you might be surprised that like how much that quality actually is important for your future employers, and like not like just being able to admit that you're not knowing something, but for example, you would take certain actions to try to find out how to solve it is a very good approach. So I wouldn't worry too much about like answering the questions not to the certain level of satisfaction or being wrong or things like that.
One thing I've always helped, talking on the way how to cope with it, even after 8 years, I still feel it. And before I go into a job interview, I sit and write down times when I've been really proud of myself. And it sounds as if you kind of have to psych yourself up, and it's almost like giving yourself that pep talk of, I deserve this, and actually then it kind of changes your mood slightly, because you're then remembering times where you've done a really good thing. And, and it might not be a technical thing, it could be that, I was really proud the first time I held my new nephew, or, and it then switches my mindset from, oh, this slightly negative, I don't deserve it, to like deserve to be here, to, oh, actually, these were moments in my life when I was really happy or really proud. And then even just that switch of mindset for me then puts me in a completely different, mindset. And it's always really helped me. So yeah, like 5 times, before an interview, 5 times in your life and you've been really proud, and just bask in your glory for a minute before your interview. Okay. We've only got 5 minutes left. So there's a few more questions around like how long did it take you to get your job, but we've kind of spoke about those. A few specific ones on boot camps, and again, I'm going to try and avoid those because we've spoken quite a lot about boot camps. Okay, here's a really good one. Is there a learning technique you can recommend to help learning new things quickly, if it's a thing, in brackets they've added? Learning techniques. Yeah, it's not really a topic we've discussed. So yeah, anything to add on that?
I think it depends on your overall learning style. So for me, I could never just watch videos to learn. If I was watching videos, I would also have to write something down. So whenever I'm learning something, I always have a notebook with me and like colored pens so that I can highlight things. And it's always super ugly and it's very messy, but it really helps me understand and visualize the connections between things.
Diagrams help me a lot. So especially with learning about APIs and like how different bits of software interact with each other, drawing diagrams, and as well coding along. So like if I'm doing like looking at a Udemy course or a YouTube video, trying to like do my own example, coding along at the same time.
Applying them to real life situations, I think sometimes with those tutorials as well. Oh, yeah.
I think having a good goal in mind and something you're working towards, because if you want to sit down and spend a month learning about X, you're going to spend that month. But if you want to say, okay, by the end of these 2 hours, I will have learned this thing, and it allows you to filter through the masses of content out there to say, okay, is this going to help me reach my goal? No. Okay, move along. Because it's so easy to sink a lot of time, and that's demotivating.
I'd say just building things, because as we said as well, it depends a lot on what kind of learner you are. I'm that kind of learner that would like to get their hands dirty before doing anything at all. I like to build my software, have my software fail, and then learn from it. So if it's about coding or any software at all, try and build things. And if you're the same as me and doesn't get demotivated but motivated from getting things wrong, then build it, get it wrong, start again, find out why it didn't work, and go through that cycle.
Yeah, I'd like to add that breaking things is actually very helpful, because you will learn from what you've broken, and you will understand how the pieces fit together more than if you just copy somebody's code and build the same thing. So if you have code and you're like, I wonder what happens if I change this, and then it breaks and you have to think, oh, it's broke because of this. So I think that's important.
Someone's just shared the illustrated.dev blog. And actually the woman behind that, Maggie, she works for Egghead, I think it is. And I recently saw her give a talk at a React conference explaining React as potatoes. And she had these beautiful diagrams of like this potato tree, and talking about how, you know, props are passed down with illustrations of potatoes. And it's honestly one of the best explanations of React I've ever seen, done through illustrations of potatoes. Maybe I'll share it after this somehow. It was absolutely brilliant.
Yes, please. I'm actually really struggling with React at the moment, so that sounds amazing.
Okay, I will find it and share it. It's, yeah, I mean, it's, you'll never not think of potatoes when you now think of React after watching this talk, but it gives such a beautiful and really easy to understand visual learning to this idea of like components, and then passing down props, and oh wait, now you've got this thing called state that you can also pass down. Like, how does all that work? And it was, yeah, I'll share it because it was really good. Anything else to add on that before I ask the final question? The final one I really like, and it's, what do you enjoy most about your job? I think it's quite a nice one to end on.
So I really like the fact that my team have done a lot to make me feel included. So when I started, you know, they would invite me out for lunch, and they would always, you know, tell me what they're doing. But overall, they are really, really helpful. And I feel like I'm constantly learning and I'm constantly challenged. And that is something that I really, really like. So when I joined tech so that I could be stimulated, so that I would always have something to think about in the next challenge. And I like that it's never boring.
Yeah.
I'd say exactly the same. I get bored so easily, but there's always something new to occupy my mind with. And just the fact that I never know enough, I can't really just like sit back and say, right, that's me done for the day, and then go home, get bored, and just like have a boring life. No, I want to like go in, feel challenged. I know, learn new things, and just like get all these like intellectual challenges every day.
I love being creative, because I feel like there's so many different ways you can do things, and so many different ways you can approach the problem, and you can, yeah, be creative and try different ways and learn how other people might do it as well.
Yeah.
For me, it's definitely the same. You know, if I wasn't a software developer, I'd be a carpenter or something, making something with your hands and then seeing it in the real world. Yeah, that's really enjoyable.
I really love the discovery phase of everything. So basically, every day you get to discover something, even if it's like a small command line tool or something like that. And it's kind of, when you get your head around it, and it's like, it's so brilliant. It's just like, it really makes your day. So yeah, I really love that part.
And the satisfaction of having spent a few hours being frustrated on something and then fixing it is worth it as well. I really enjoy that feeling.
Yeah, that's a good, there's always that, yes, I figured it out, like that I've heard out the office, and you know it's a developer who's been stuck for a while and then they've, you know, solved that problem. Cool. Okay, well, thank you so much to, you know, panelists for joining. Thank you so much to everybody else for joining. I hope, you know, it was useful, it was helpful. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, huge thank you. Nelly, I'll message you about getting this into a blog, because I think, yeah, the questions would make a really good post. And yeah, thank you so much. And I'll save this session and put it on our YouTube channel so we can share it for people who weren't able to come. So yeah, thank you so much.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
You too.
Thank you.